Morning everybody. So today is my first day off of work after about, I don't know, 6 days of dealing with an incident, and I'm pretty far behind on stuff, so we're going to try and get caught up on a few things. The other thing I'm going to be doing today is getting ready for our vacation. We're going out of town for a couple days, so I want to make it as easy as I can on the person that's going to take care of stuff here while I'm gone. And lastly, I was asked recently about the design of the Coops and whether or not I built them or not. And while the answer is no, I did not build the Coops, I am going to go into a little bit of detail today and explain kind of the design aspects that I can see and some of the decisions that I would make a little differently if I were building them today. And that way, hopefully it'll help whoever's watching if you want to try to replicate it. Good morning, ladies. How we doing? Figure I'll touch on something right here. So I recently had water get into the garage and ruin about 2.5 bags, so probably, I don't know, 120 pounds or so of feed, which really sucks. And since I was having to buy some more anyways, I thought about trying to switch over to pellets as opposed to the crumbles and see how that goes. And they've been a little bit slow to take to the pellets, but the crumbles were leaving quite a significant amount of waste because it powders a lot, and I was finding that probably close to 10, maybe even a little more percent of the bag was just not really usable because of the crumbles. And it would also clog up my feeder and they would no longer eat from it. And so I was dumping a lot more food. So I'm hoping that the crumbles will do a little better, but I guess only time will tell. The other thing I found recently but haven't had a chance to test regarding food is there's a local feed mill here, not the super local feed mill. They are a Purina feed mill and they don't carry anything organic. They've been great and they've got a lot of other good stuff. But they don't carry organic, and I've been trying to stay consistent with feeding them nothing but organics and table scraps. So I found one that's about an hour away, and they actually sell it. It's actual grain, it's not milled feed. Well, it's grain, not the crumbles and the mashed up stuff. So I'm gonna give them a call at some point and find out if it's whole grain or milled grain. And their prices look good. Based on the prices, I'm assuming it's probably not milled, and I don't really have a good way to mill. So I'm kind of hoping that that's not the case, because I don't want to try to get into soaking feed or anything like that. I've never done it, and it just looks like it'd be a bit too much of a hassle for me to want to deal with right now. I just don't have that kind of time, or frankly the space, because my garage is a wreck. But if the prices check out right, then it'll be totally worth the hour drive out there to get a couple bags here and there. And so we're gonna try it and see. All right, so I'm back out here at the Coops after it's warmed up a little bit. We finally had that storm front roll through, and it's gotten a lot colder out here. But so I'm gonna actually do a walk around of one of the two coops, get some measurements and share essentially the dimensions. I'm gonna actually talk a little bit about a couple of things that I would do differently as I go, and you know, if there's any additional questions, feel free to leave questions in the comments section, and you know, if there's some more measurements or something, I'm happy to try and get that. I'm gonna do some of this as approximations just because it's not easy to get exact angles and things like that. I don't have the plans because, as I said, I didn't build them. But to start with, these are all the 4 posts are 2x2s, and they're approximately 4.5 feet. They're actually just under 4.5 feet. My advice would actually be to make that a little bit longer, and the reasons for that I'll get into on the inside. Due to the current height, either you would want to bring the floors down. If you wanted them to be about the same height, bring the floors down. I think there needs to be more room inside the coop. And again, that is primarily due to the roosting bars. All right, so I'm gonna get length measurements here. All right, so outside to outside, lengthwise is 92 inches. Our width is actually 48.5 inches. And again, I've already talked about this, but we are, looks like about 54 inches bottom to top. And the top of this 4x4 is actually angled on the same pitch as the roof. And so you can, you make that cut depending on what kind of pitch you want to use on the roof. Again, I'm not an expert on angles and finding the pitch and stuff. I'll leave that up to somebody that's a little bit more experienced with it. To be quite honest, I usually eyeball that stuff and then use a speed square to get my cuts, so I don't actually know the exact angles. Now, one of the nice features about the Coop, but also one of the most frustrating things about the Coop, is actually this removable side. There is just a track that was on here, and I don't know what piece of the roofing this is. And I guess I should back up. This is all metal roofing material. It's all the siding, all the metal pieces on this is all roofing material. This track is, I'm not familiar enough with roofing to for sure tell you what that track comes from. But if you do, it's like a J channel that's just screwed into the side. And then this is just cut to length and sits in there. And then there's these braces. Let me get one of them off. Just typical hardware U braces that slide in over this 2x4 and pin the metal up to keep it from sliding out. The reason I like the channel is because it makes it easy to get the siding off and on. However, it fills up with junk, and so you got to clean that out. If you don't clean it out, it won't stay, or it won't sit in there properly. Yeah, the problem with this channel is that if you don't keep it cleaned out, you can't get the siding in there. And so when you're raking everything out, you got to make sure this gets cleaned out when you're done. All right, so aside from the 4x4 corner posts, everything else on the inside is actually framed with 2x4s, except the two pieces in the middle that give the center some support, and it also gives something just to be able to nail onto if you need to attach anything. The bottom is actually 3/4 inch roof decking that's just pinned on top of the 2x4s. So, all right, so it appears to me you've got your 4x4s set at whatever length you want them, and you cut your 2x4 framing end to end on the bottom and the top. All right, cut that to length. Those are just toe-nailed in. You could pocket hole, I guess, if you want. And then your cross bracing side to side is also 2x4s. I'll get inside here in a minute and I'll show you the inner framing for like the roosting and stuff, and that's the part that if I were rebuilding this I would do it a little differently. All right, got one of the ladies coming in to potentially try and lay an egg or just forage. Side note, all of my younger chicks, one of them has started laying eggs, and I don't know which one yet, but they're little itty bitty brown eggs, dark brown eggs, and so I'll show that if I get one while I'm out here. Anyways, on the inside, the interior height up to the roosting bars is 20 inches, and that's fine. However, because of the pitch of the roof, there is only about 9 inches from the roof to the top of that bar. And while that's not necessarily an issue, the issue has been when they try to jump up onto the roosting bars, I hear them, you know, hitting, you know, wings and head and stuff on the bottom of the roof. Would you back up? We're trying to do a video here. You guys like to photobomb, I know you do. So anyways, what I would actually do if I were gonna rebuild this is I would make the interior height higher. So I'd make the interior height higher, leave the roosting bars about where they are, but the roof would actually sit further up off of the roosting bars, and that would give them more room to actually get onto them. And so instead of having, what are we at, 20 inches to the roosting bars and then 9 to the roof, let's get that, yeah. So the top of the 2x4 here, which is where the bottom of these roosting bars rest, is at 20 inches. And that's fine. But the actual roof, if you brought your 4x4s higher and set your roof on top of that, you would actually have more room. And I would think at least giving them about a foot of space above the roosting bars, as opposed to the 9 inches that they've got now, would be plenty. But if you wanted more space, you could have even more. All right, so one other thing I want to cover is this. So the pitch of the roof is at 22 inches over the top of the roosting bar, which is 20 inches off of the floor. And so you've got, what is that? What is it? So you have 42 inches from the peak to your floor decking. And again, because of the pitch of the roof, I would bring these 4x4s up and just raise the entire height of the roof up. All right, so I'm gonna try to get in here and get some close-up shots of some of the work. It looks like everything's done with, screws and brad nails. Would you please keep it down? We're trying to shoot a video here. So you can see, here's the roosting bars. I find that because of the height of the roof, they don't often use them. They actually bed down in here a lot of times, because it's hard for them to get up onto the roofs without hitting the roof. Let's see, we'll get it in here. This is one of the end walls, so you can see how the framing is done, how the roof is shot. And I'll go around to the roost, the nesting boxes, and show those. Hello. How we doing? This end wall is basically the same. And then of course the center here. All right, so the nesting boxes, it looks to me like they were built one way and then redesigned. And so I'm going to talk about what I think was going on here, what I like and don't like about them. And so first off, the roof is hinged, and it's actually on a piano hinge. So there's two piano hinges here, and this pivots up, which I like. The downside is, because of the interior dimensions that we talked about and because of the pitch of the roof, this actually hits the roof, and that's as far as it can open. And so while I can see down inside and I can reach, I can't see real clearly to the bottom, especially the stuff that's against this outer wall. And so it's hard to tell whether you're reaching in to grab eggs sometimes or reaching in and grabbing something you don't want to pick up. For the sake of getting some measurements here, this front is actually slightly lower than the back. And I would actually do one of two things. I would either put this on a greater slant so that the outer wall is shorter, which would allow two things. It would allow for the roof to pitch higher so that it'll open further. And it'll also make this shorter, which will make it easier to see inside. And so you'd have more room to open this, and you'd be able to see further down. That's one option. The other option is if you change, not just making these shorter, which is something that I would do, but if you also make the roof a little higher, this will give this a chance to set these boxes lower from the roof, and this would open further. And so I'm going to get a couple of measurements for you. So the front here is 16 inches, and that's actually the siding on the outside. The interior height is 13.5 inches. I'd probably, if I were rebuilding it, go with closer to 12 inches on the front here. And you can make these square. Our depth is 10 inches, which the depth is fine. All right, our top, let's see. Our top is, about 10 inches. It's cut on a bevel. And then of course the length is whatever length you want to make it. However many of these you want to add on here, but they are 13 inches inside to inside. Which 13 inches wide is plenty for them. Honestly, you could probably get away with them being a little tighter, but there's no, specific science to that. Let's talk about what's going on down here. So down here, what the previous owner did was actually take two of the nesting boxes and pull the center divider out for some reason, and then built what I think was an attempt at a roll-away nesting box. And so this, I find that two things. One, the wood on this is already rotting because it's not well protected. And two, they never use this. Even with the other boxes blocked off, they'll just sit down in the middle of the coop somewhere and lay eggs, or they'll lay them out here in the run, and they're not using this. And so this is, I think it was a neat idea to try, but I find that in neither one of these, they don't use it. And at some point I'm gonna have to take this out, and I'll probably just close this back in instead of rebuilding this box, because it's just, they don't use it. All right, and the last thing is this gable up here. What they did up here is, you can see this is the channel, or the flashing rather, that wraps around the outer edge of the roof. If you've got a metal roof, this is what's on your ends. So this is on all four corners they used it and cut out for this top piece here. There's the piece that would go on the ridge. Let's see if we back up and get a better look. The section that would go on the ridge of your house. And then of course the actual roofing itself, roofing screws. And then this is just flashing that's been kind of bent into place. And so the things that I like about this is that it breathes. So I don't have like moisture buildup in here. It doesn't get humid inside of these. There's breathing room underneath here. There's actually breathing room in behind this board. There's breathing room up in this ridge here as well. And so the Coop breathes really well, but it also stays nice and warm, especially with all the extra wood chip and straw. Plus I've got, you know, about 10 birds per coop right now. So they stay good and warm. Well, hello, you came out of nowhere. All right, the last thing is the door and ramp. So the Coop is actually set up on block. And that's, let's see, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but all right, so it's set up on cinder blocks, and the reason for that is to keep the wood posts out of the ground, so that way they don't rot as quickly. But the last thing other than that is actually the door here. I think the door is actually, was it 8 inches wide by, yeah, it's 8 inches wide by 12 inches tall. And the original door is actually framed with the same metal J channel that's on the outside that holds the wall in. But I've actually covered it up so that I can put on this automatic door. And on the other side, I put the, you know, plywood slide-in door on it because I didn't want to buy another one of these. I prefer to have them closed up so that, you know, possums and things like that don't get into the coops at night and give me any trouble. These are pretty secure. They're high enough off the ground to where, you know, it's not easy for anything to get to them. The only access into the coop outside of something that flies or can jump pretty significant are the ramps. And if you put a good door on these, you're not gonna have too much that can get in there. And that's important to me because of the, you know, the run not having any netting on it. The ramp is a 1x8, and it's just screwed at an angle down into the floor. Nothing special about that. These are little cut-off trim pieces that have been put on here. They're every 8 inches going down. Again, not a science, it just gives them something to kind of grip onto so they're not just sliding off of it. I've also got the bottom of this set up on a brick so that the wood's up out of the dirt, and so that the, you know, this is not too steep, because it's a little bit steep for most chicken coops, I believe. All right, so I know this wasn't exactly a super professional, you know, rundown of everything, maybe slightly disorganized, if you will, and it's not formal plans, but hopefully that gives an idea of kind of some of the design of the coops. So for those that are interested, maybe that'll help if you want to replicate them. Again, I'm not really a builder. I can build things, but it's a little bit of trial and error. And if you've seen the chickshaw or watched that video, you'll know that you know, if you have a reasonable amount of experience just basically putting boards together and understand how to do your measurements, it's not super difficult to build. But again, I don't have any kind of formal plans, and I didn't build these. But they've been pretty good so far. I've talked about the things I would do different, and just to recap, I would actually make the interior of the coop a little taller. That way the roof is a little higher up off the roosting bars. I would actually make the nesting boxes a little bit smaller so that the roof of the nesting boxes can hinge open. I would explore some other nesting box designs if I were rebuilding it. I actually really like the milk crate slide out stuff that's on some of them, and it would make it easier to kind of slide those out and do what you need to do. But there are a lot of different ways you can build those, so I would just suggest you know, explore some options if you're going to rebuild these. Yeah, I might would use different siding. I don't know. I might would actually, instead of using a whole lot of the metal siding, I would actually just use, you know, painted plywood to build the outside, just because I think it would be cheaper to build, especially with today's market. Even though wood's expensive, that metal roofing is not cheap. And I know that because I just replaced the roof on my house when we bought this property. And I kind of wanted a metal roof so that I could do, you know, rain catchment off of it, but it was just entirely too expensive. It was going to be another like 15 grand over the asphalt roof that we bought, and we bought really high quality asphalt shingle roof. I also think if I were, you know, again, rebuilding these with a different material, that the plywood would be easier to work with. Cutting out the metal can be a bit of a pain. And again, you can see I used a cutoff wheel to do a lot of the cuts for the chickshaw, because I reused some of this same metal from another building that was on the property that I've started to tear down. So if you've got the tools, if you've got, you know, metal shears and want to use the metal, they look really nice. And the metal's going to last far longer than the wood ever will. But I think you're going to spend more and it's going to be more work. But again, if you've got the tools and stuff, go for it. These are pretty solid, and while I don't know how old they are, just based on some of the exposed wood, I'm going to guess they've been here for a number of years, and most of the inside looks really good. If you want to stick around for any bit, I'm going to actually do a little clean out work on this one. I'm not going to clean all of this out because I'm going for you know, a bit of a deep bedding option in here. That way the colder it gets, the more bedding I've got. But I am going to go in and clean out some of the manure, and the nesting boxes are where it kind of collects, because again, they kind of sleep in there, not just nest in there, and I don't like getting eggs that have chicken manure all over them. This actually makes for really quick work of cleaning out this channel and reaching in over to the nesting boxes and raking those clean. Excuse me. So good thing is when I do go to clean these out, a full clean out probably only takes me about, you know, maybe a half an hour to scrape everything out and put all new bedding in. If all I'm doing is doing a little clean out, it's maybe 10 minutes a piece. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions for the last time, please do message and let me know. I'll be happy to help where I can. Please consider subscribing, and see you next time.